need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Everyone thought things were fantastic behind the scenes, but Arnold Schwarzenegger has revealed secrets fans never knew about the Terminator. Years after he thrilled the audience with an excellent performance, he's out to clear all suspicions and answer the budding questions on everyone's mind. How will this change his relationship with the producers of the Terminator? Will this be the last we see of him in the movie series? Keep watching, and you'll find out. The reveal: Arnold Schwarzenegger, an extraordinary actor who dazzled fans with his superb acting, has exposed something about the movie Terminator. He surprised fans this time. It wasn't with a performance, but with news that no one expected. Arnold, in an interview, named the worst Terminator movie. It was normal for critics to say vile things about the film, but surely not one of the cast members, the film's lead actor. As with every significant action franchise, this movie series has an odd mix of science fiction. The Terminator is often described as the one movie that changed the stereotype for big-budget franchises in cinematic history. No one can take this record away. However, Arnold revealed that the series has been struggling financially for a long time. He explained the reason for this. This happened because there are between lesser sequels to follow Terminator 2, Judgment Day. I think this has been a dramatic fall from grace. The 77 years actor shared his thoughts on which Terminator film he feels is the weakest in the franchise during an interview. Arnold didn't stutter or give a diplomatic answer. He didn't try to ignore the question or dabble around. He had a clear answer that critics believe was a fairly blunt response to the question. He said, "I would say the worst was the number 4, Terminator Salvation, because that was done during the time I was governor of California, and I was not in it. How do you do a Terminator movie without me being in the Terminator movie?" Arnold continued. "It doesn't make any sense." Critics didn't need more convincing from Arnold, as that's what they've always thought about the Terminator and its decline in impact. Fans of the film series, however, struggled with Arnold's opinions. In the end, they settled for the facts. After all, he was the iconic lead actor of the series. If anyone knew what truly happened behind the scenes, it would be Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Terminator Salvation was released in 2009. As part of the series, it focused on the post-apocalyptic conflict between John Connor's human resistance and the cybernetic armies of Skynet. Although Christian Bale delivered a strong performance in his role as Connor, something was missing from the series, and that was the lead actor, Arnold. The Terminator may have borrowed other concepts, but you can't deny the role Arnold played in the series' continuity. A list of actors, including Sam Worthington, Anton Yelchin, and Bryce Dallas Howard, were on Terminator 4, yet it felt like something was missing, a final piece that makes it all come together. Arnold's tenure as California's governor was on, and he couldn't be on the series. The production decided that it wouldn't be a problem and pushed through with filming. Sadly, the movies earned mostly mixed to negative reviews, halting any plans for an immediate sequel. The production soon realized its mistake and was desperate for a comeback. In 2015, Arnold announced his formal return to acting and joined the next Terminator series, Terminator Genesis. 0.32 It was the first time the actor had shown his infamous T-800 since the last Terminator, Rise of the Machines in 2003. Despite Arnold's return, it seemed the damage had been done and was irreparable. The series and its later sequel, Terminator Dark Fate, both earned similarly mixed reviews upon their release. Arnold Schwarzenegger was one cast member honest enough to come forward with the truth and let the fans understand what happened behind the scenes. When the Terminator first hit the theater on October 1984, it was a game changer. It took the world by storm and stood out from the other movies. You could see the precision and detail in every scene. The script was well thought out, and its futuristic thriller redefined both the post-apocalyptic and time travel subgenres. It was unlike anything viewers had seen. It found a way to infuse concepts about the dangers of modern technology. The Terminator spoke about the future long before many of its viewers lived it. It was also a career-changing moment for the cast of the movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the biggest action icons of the 80s, and he still holds that title today. The Terminator isn't one of those movies that's exaggerated. It's worth every accolade. James Cameron deserved the recognition for the masterpiece he pulled together. His directorial skills were second to none. And he was one of the pioneers in the movie industry. After the success of The Terminator, Cameron's subsequent projects were all hits. It expanded the movie's reach and put its actors in the spotlight. Fans couldn't get over the action scenes. The series remains one of the most popular franchises in the history of science fiction. Movie scenes and roles. When Arnold began his journey with the Terminator series, he had a preferred role, and it wasn't the Terminator. He wanted to play Kyle Reese. Even the production head at Orion Pictures Studio didn't think Arnold was fit for the lead character. Mike Medavoy had initially suggested O.J. Simpson as the man for the job. When Cameron met Arnold, he never offered him the Terminator role because it was out of reach. He also thought Arnold could play the role of the time-traveling soldier, Kyle Reese. However, that changed after his conversation with the actor. Although Arnold has no interest in playing the Terminator, he had some nice suggestions on the T-800 motivations. Here's a fun fact. Most of his suggestions on several elements of the character made it into the final product. Cameron knew Arnold had to be the Terminator. He said no one could do it better. The actor wasn't pleased when he heard this news. Villain characters were not his thing, so he struggled to accept the role, but later warmed up to the idea. Lance Henriksen also had a brief moment as the cold-blooded cyborg. While Arnold never had plans of being the Terminator, Lance had no problem with the role. He had worked with Cameron on one of his films, Aliens. They had a great relationship and collaborated on the Terminator series. He played a vital role in getting the film approved. He often dressed like the character during a pitch meeting for the movie with Hemdale Pictures. Sometimes Lance would give a dramatic entrance and burst through the door wearing a leather jacket, fake lacerations, and gold foil on his teeth. He dressed as a cyborg and forced his way into the discussion room as an attention-grabbing stunt to startle the executives. He helped Cameron get the attention of those who needed to push the film. The director was pleased by the shocked expressions on the faces of Hemdale's head, John Daly, and his staff. The actor's interpretation was so impressive that it helped finalize the deal. Although Lance didn't get the Terminator role, he played Police Sergeant Hal Vukovich. Although Lance was portrayed as the Terminator in the early concept art, the studios wanted someone with a high profile. No, they were not talking about Arnold, but after his conversation with Cameron, there was no doubt he was the man for the job. He felt the Terminator should move its body, head, and gaze. And although it was completely counter to Cameron's original plan, he loved the ideas Arnold had about the project. Lance remained a promising freshman at Cameron and settled for a more minor role. The movie had a great mix of established actors, rising stars, and physical performers. You remember Michael Biehn, don't you? He played the character of Reese, keeping the audience engaged. Here's something you may not know. When the production considered actors for the role, Michael wasn't on the list. Bruce Springsteen, Bruce Willis, Kurt Russell, Mel Gibson, Christopher Reeve, and Mickey Rourke were among the top names considered for the Reese character. However, none of them cut. Michael Biehn became one of the most unforgettable science fiction actors of his 90s. One of his scenes became a running joke throughout the series. It's no surprise when actors and directors form shorthand jokes or repeated catchphrases. Cameron thought to do the same with Michael's character. His heroes ended up having their hands bitten in all three of his films. Sarah Connor bit him in The Terminator. He was bitten by the lone survivor Newt in the movie Aliens, and Big Bridgman bit him in The Abyss. James Cameron also did all he could to cut costs during the filming of Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Remember, the whole series was a costly production for its time. The director had to find a way to make it all happen, whether that meant cutting corners to save costs. Do you want to know what he did? The twins. If your memory serves you correctly, you'll recall that 2 sets of identical siblings were used throughout the filming. The hired identity twins, Don and Dan Stanton, were used to achieve the old-school visual effect. Linda Hamilton's twin sister Leslie also played a massive role in the series. James Cameron took whatever option he could to stay on budget. He also had a brief appearance in the series, but these could be considered easy-to-miss off-screen roles. He learned his voice to a couple of scenes in The Terminator. Do you remember a voice canceling a date on Sarah's answering machine? Yes, that was Cameron. He was also the receptionist at the Tiki Motel. He took a more terrifying role in Terminator 2, Judgment Day. He voided the shrieks of the T-1000. Improvisations. Although the producers put effort into making the first movie a hit, not every extra touch was planned. Sometimes the additional touch was unhealthy for the cast members. The scene where Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor spend an evening hiding out under a bridge from both the police and the Terminator. They face a fog morning after. Many viewers would guess the fog wasn't real. Well, it wasn't fake either. The film production occurred during the Mexican fruit fly panic in 1982. Malathion, an insecticide, was often sprayed in the Los Angeles area. The filmmakers had planned to wait for the clouds to clear before shooting the scene, but decided to use the added effect instead. Was it healthy for the crew and cast members? You know the answer. However, we can agree they made a great movie. Do you know who was Cameron's first choice for the liquid metal villain? Yes, it wasn't Robert Patrick. It was MTV icon Billy Idol. The stunt coordinator for Terminator 2 discovered this after looking over Cameron's pre-production storyboards. Joel Kramer shared this in an interview. "I told Cameron that these storyboards look just like Billy Idol, and he replied, yes, he was my first pick. Sadly, Billy never got to play the role. He was involved in a nasty motorcycle accident. It left him with a broken leg and cost him huge movie roles. He was considered for a high-profile role in Oliver Stone's movie, The Doors. Arnold thought it was strange to say the words that would later become the most famous one-liner of his career. Remember when the cyborg said, 'I'll be back'? The actor requested that the lines be modified to, 'I will be back.' This was one of the moments Cameron disagreed with Arnold. He was not pleased with the suggestion. He had to demand that the actor do what was required of him. After 10 takes, Arnold delivers the iconic catchphrase. They settled for what would later become the most memorable part of the series. A legendary movie. It all began with a dream, or maybe a nightmare. James Cameron, a young filmmaker at the time, had been feverish in a hotel room when he saw an image of a metallic figure, half human, half machine, walking out of flames. That singular vision would one day shape the future of science fiction forever. This spark ignited The Terminator, a movie that not only redefined what action movies were, but also revolutionized humanity's fears about its own creations. When The Terminator ended its film series in the 80s, no one expected it to become a cultural phenomenon. It was made on a budget for a small crew just to pursue the wild idea. The producers soon learned that some wild ideas can be life-changing. The terrifying and breathtaking mystery of a color machine sent from the future to destroy one woman before she could give birth to the savior of humanity was both scary and brilliant. The audience had never seen anything like this. It wasn't just a tale that drew the science fiction fans in. It caught everybody off guard. Critics congratulated its creative flair, and news about the movie spread like wildfire. The Terminator was in every conversation, newspaper, and even in the dreams of the people who saw it. They would come to be one of the most famous quotes in film history, "I'll be back," which will continue to be remembered. What many did not realize then was the extent to which the film's success had gone. The cast brought their best foot forward and were in good spirits, but none knew the story would become one of the most famous science fiction sagas ever told. That surprise would soon give rise to decades of sequels, spin-offs, and a lasting legacy. The follow-up series. Following the overwhelming success of the first film, James Cameron knew he had created something powerful. However, it wasn't until Terminator 2, Judgment Day arrived in 1991, that the saga truly cemented itself in cinematic history. It wasn't just bigger, it was revolutionary. The visual effects were years ahead of their time, and audiences were stunned by the realism of the liquid metal villain, the T-1000. The sequel pushed technology to its limits, and it paid off. The film won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Visual Effects and Best Makeup and Hairstyling. It also redefined the boundaries between hero and villain, turning Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator into a cold, culling machine, and his fangs were literally unmovable. However, the story did not end there. The Terminator has spawned several sequels, including Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, Genesis, and Dark Fate. Every actor tried to capture the same magic that the first 2 films had. Some went against it, while others did not. However, it kept fans coming back, no matter how many years had passed. The fascination with man against machine and fate kept the ratings up. The cast of the series. A face appears as soon as you hear the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Before he would become the impenetrable cyborg, Arnold embodied the role. You now know that James Cameron didn't consider him the Terminator. Arnold was supposed to play the villain, Kyle Reese. However, his presence exuded power, and his voice conveyed control. Cameron decided he was the perfect machine. Arnold took the role very seriously. He studied the movement of real machines, tried all the gestures, and spoke his lines with a precise rhythm that made him seem almost inhuman. In his voice, "I'll be back" was meant to be a simple line, but it became a legendary one. This was a lifetime event that transformed his career. He was not just an Austrian bodybuilder, he was an international icon. He prepared for every scene. The Terminator had a premium format figure, and Arnold had to match that. To achieve the T-800 automation, including wielding various firearms, he underwent rigorous training. He learned how to assemble and strip weapons while blindfolded. This was to help his movements look clinical and automatic. Shooting ranges became his new home as he spent hours daily, never looking down at his weapon during reloading or cocking. He also had to keep his eyes wide open without blinking during scenes. Arnold also had to make his inhuman appearance look believable. After all, he was meant to be portraying a robot. Many viewers may not have noticed this, but if you watch closely, you'll see that his eyes always move first and his head follows. Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't just creative with the role, he gave it his all. His performance was exceptional, and that took training. Did you know he spent more effort on the physical nature of the character than delivering dialogue? He only uttered 58 words in the original film.
You know what you have to do. You know my destiny.
The film's success brought him into the spotlight, but he wasn't about that life. Behind the scenes, Arnold loved acting. He often said that the Terminator made him who he was as an actor and a person. He cherished every second he spent entertaining the fans. Even decades later, as others were leaving, he remained faithful to his words. "I owe it all to that film," he once said. "It gave me a voice. It gave me a future." Yet not everything was easy. The long hours, physical demands, and constant pressure to do better were the price for success. On challenging days, Arnold continued pushing, and that could be what made him special. He didn't play a machine. He became one with the role. Arnold Schwarzenegger's legacy on the Terminator was far beyond the success of the films. Even after decades, his hearty words, "I'll be back," still echo in pop culture as a continuous promise. Though not even born, some still know this line. What's more fascinating is how Arnold sees the Terminator not just as a character, but as a mirror of his own life. A fighter, resilient, always standing up no matter how many times life tries to knock him down. When the sequels were later released, notably Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Arnold had brought back a new facet of the machines: human emotion. It was not the cold, brutal killer that dominated the first film. Instead, he was a protector, learning to sense human emotions even though he didn't feel them. This twist gave audiences something deeper to think about, something emotional and meaningful. The scene where the Terminator lowers himself into molten steel and gives a thumbs up as he crashes out remains one of the most poignant highlights of the series. Arnold is still deeply attached to the role. His resilience is still a bit of Terminator in every scene, whether in an action film or a lighthearted comedy. It's no wonder fans today see him as a living legend, a steel smith who showed strength and an unusually kind heart on screen. Linda Hamilton. If Arnold was the powerhouse, Linda Hamilton was the soul. While her performance as Sarah Connor is one of the most dramatic transformations in cinematic history, it is one that she has ever embodied. In the first film, she was an ordinary waitress who felt terror, confusion, and hunger as she struggled to survive. By Judgment Day, she had become something entirely different: fierce, hardened, and unstoppable.
Like the mother of the future? I mean, am I tough? Organized? I can't even balance.
Linda filled the character with her emotions. She spent several months training with weapons and combat. She wanted Sarah Connor to be incredible, not just a survivor, a survival, a mother who would fight for her child at all costs. Her physical transformation stunned everyone. Gone was the soft-spoken woman from the first film. In her place stood a warrior who challenged fate and refused to back down. Behind the scenes, though, Linda faced her own battles. She had the stress of continuing her fitness, the emotional strain of the role, and the expectations of fans all in heavy contention. She was the symbol of strength for an entire generation. She could have easily fallen into the background and disappeared without leaving, but she returned in Terminator 2. Judgment Day was utterly transformed, tougher, and with a fire in her eyes that told a story of pain and power. Fans were amazed by how much she had changed, and it was not just physically. They could see her emotions in every scene. She portrayed the danger of survival and the sacrifices a mother would have to make to protect her child. Linda later made it clear to her audience that taking on Sarah's role was a challenging task. She discussed how they had to live up to fans' expectations and how much she personally invested in the role. But when she came back to reprise the character a few years later in Terminator: Dark Fate, it was evident that the fire never went out. She was wise, daring, and just as eloquent as Sarah Connor. The reason fans see Linda Hamilton as the heart of the franchise even today is her strength. She showed them that strength does not necessarily mean victory, but rather perseverance and the courage to keep fighting long after the world thinks you've quit. Michael Biehn. Michael Biehn played the soldier from the future, Kyle Reese. His performance in the first Terminator film left the movie audience with beating heart. He was not only a man in love seeking to save the world, but also a man prepared to risk everything for someone he barely knew. Because of that emotional depth, this story never felt hidden. Instead, it embodied the essence of a cold science fiction movie. Michael's relationship with Linda Hamilton was genuine. Their scenes were not boring. They portrayed two souls clinging together amidst chaos. After the movie's success, despite struggles with fame, his face was suddenly the center of the public spotlight, something he wasn't ready for. Opportunities arose, fame followed, but Biehn soon learned Hollywood is a challenging place to navigate. While he continued his film career with other notable roles, The Terminator never quite achieved the same level of success. However, Michael never saw it as a loss. His work was often cited as a privilege few actors ever get. "If this is my legacy, I'm proud of it," he once said. "I'm proud of it." Michael Biehn's portrayal of the Terminator showed grace. The actor dedicated himself to his craft, but never sought to be the center of attention. He only got on the cover of Kyle Reese when he was cast as Kyle Reese. However, after that performance, his face was forever stamped in the memory of science fiction fans all over the world. He wasn't just a soldier sent from the future. He was a pivotal character in the series. His eyes sometimes conveyed fear, love, and duty, and it was the mixture of these emotions that made his entire screen time memorable. You could see his dedication to duty, and that's what made the love story between Reese and Sarah Connor feel so real. Michael immersed himself in the role. He was physically exhausted all the time, often filming action scenes and emotional scares. Despite the challenges, he never complained. He later told his cast members that Biehn was the emotional anchor of the first film. Without his warmth and sincerity, the Terminator's heart would have felt colder and more mechanical than the audience remembers it. Though he died before the film came to an end, he left a legacy throughout the entire series. He was seen in Sarah's memories and in John Connor's own destiny throughout the series. Michael went on to star in films like Aliens, The Abyss, and Tombstone, but fans always seemed to return to Kyle Reese. What's surprising is how humble he is about it all. He often laughs very softly in the interview because he never thought the movie would fall apart. However, decades later, his performance remains a subject of study and celebration because he was no longer as famous as Schwarzenegger or Linda Hamilton. Michael Biehn's quiet power and human touch gave the Terminator its enduring meaning. Edward Furlong. The narrator wanted a young John Connor, a boy who would grow up to save humans. Edward Furlong came into the picture. He was only a teenager, but he captured one of the most memorable performances of the decade. His innocence and rebellious streak added to the suspense. Edward became an overnight star, appearing on posters and magazine covers. The Hollywood prying eyes were difficult to avoid. His battles with addiction, lawsuits, and the pressure to stay relevant defined his early life as he struggled to live up to a role. Fans often wondered what happened to the young boy who had once saved the world on screen. When Edward spoke about Terminator 2, you could sense the joy in his voice. It wasn't just a movie to him, it was his childhood, his defining moment. Though his later years were turbulent, that role stayed with him as he relived the memory. "It was a great time of my life," he said, once smiling softly. Even with everything that followed, Edward Furlong's entering the Terminator world wasn't nearly as much a turn of fate as a reversal of luck. The moment he appeared in the Terminator franchise with a role as John Connor in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, he was a teenager. Edward was raw, honest, unpredictable, and edgy. That's what made him perfect. He brought a calm flair into the story while matching the rage and emotion that surrounded him. He made audiences think this boy would one day become the leader of the human resistance. However, fame came too fast, and he was too young. Edward later said that the attention distracted him. He was always in the spotlight, traveling the world to interview and premiere while on a self-discovery journey. It was hard to manage the demands. He suffered from the built-up pressure over time, but fans never stopped cheering for him. Having performed John Connor for many years, his portrayal remains one of the most significant pieces of the series. Emotional, vulnerable, and fiercely human. An old friend came to visit Edward, even decades later, when Edward went back to the franchise. He reminds fans that a legend will always find his way. Robert Patrick. Robert Patrick terrified audiences in Terminator 2 as the T-1000. He portrayed a different kind of villain on the screen, cold, quiet, and serene. Patrick's version, unlike Arnold's heavyweight mechanical Terminator, was sleek, fast, and utterly human. Fans knew that very little planning had gone into that performance. Robert trained for years to run, to move like a machine disguised in flesh. His eyes looked cold, a quality that humanity recognized as a sign of weakness. Patrick took on the training not just to build physical capacity, but also for psychological build. Robert delivered his role. He engaged his audience in every scene. People feared him, admired him, and couldn't look away when he was on screen. He was also known for being humble, compassionate, and friendly. Although he embodied the character, he never let it define him. The T-1000 was a nightmare, but he was my dream come true. The moment that defined Robert Patrick's comeback was Terminator 2, Judgment Day. It stunned the entire world. When he first appeared on film as T-1000, many didn't know what he was doing. He was not the muscular, muscle-bound machine of Schwarzenegger's Terminator. He was lean, calm, and human. That made him much more terrifying. Robert calmed audiences down to the bone. His movement was exact, his expression cold, his voice controlled like a predator who was never out to run because he knew he would catch his prey. Behind that performance was an actor who gave everything. Robert trained intensely, running miles a day to achieve that smooth, almost inhuman sprint that gave this film one of its most memorable visuals. He went further to explore how animals communicated and moved. It brought a more natural feel to his role. Although he portrayed his role fiercely, he was shy and often joked with the crew between takes. He became one of the most famous actors in the world. He continued to star in other projects, including The X-Files, Walk the Line, and many others. However, the T-1000 would remain one of his notable works. Fans still tell him they had nightmares because of him, a compliment he is glad of. The tragedies and the triumphs. The Terminator was never without controversies and tragedies. The cast and crew faced personal, career, and fame-related struggles. The series left its strain due to the rigorous scenes and training the cast were required to endure. A year of stunt and bodybuilding stunts had Arnold undergo multiple surgeries. Linda struggled physically and emotionally with her role. However, the cast felt connected not only as co-stars but also as survivors of a story bigger than themselves. When an imminent sequel was released, fans didn't just cheer out of excitement, but because it was a reunion of partners who shared the same struggles. Decades after its release, The Terminator remains a lasting influence on pop culture. Its influence can be seen in countless films, television shows, and even honest conversations about artificial intelligence in the real world. It wasn't just a movie about machines. It was a warning, a mirror reflecting what humanity could become if it lost control of its own creations. The franchise has inspired generations of filmmakers and actors, From its humble beginnings to its billion-dollar legacy, the Terminator remains a testament to creativity, courage, and the power of storytelling. It taught the world that the future isn't written, that every choice, every act of love or defiance can change destiny. It's also one of the messages fans never fully realized. Beneath the explosions, beneath the machines and chaos, the Terminator was always about one thing: the fight to stay human. What do you think of the Terminator? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.